Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and this is the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Megha Bhatia, Chief Commercial Officer of Eve Air Mobility. Megha has been Customer Service Manager and then Vice President Sales and Marketing in Business Aviation at Rolls-Royce and Chief Strategy Officer at Jet Support Services. At Eve Air, Megha oversees global sales, market intelligence, and government relations divisions. Welcome here, Megan.
Hi, Chuck. How are you? Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to start by just tell us kind of the Eve Air story. I know you started in 2017. You weren't there, but it was really an idea inside the company, and it's really evolved into a major business.
Oh, well, you're spot on, Chuck, and I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm happy to take you through Eve's origins. Eve was conceived out of Embraer's innovation incubator called Embraer X. And from there, it spawned into an independent company becoming public in 2021. And so now you can find that Eve is listed on the New York Stock Exchange with the ticker EVEX. And with it being a public company, we've still maintained a very close relationship with Embraer. In fact, today, remains one of actually the only player in the space that is backed by an aircraft manufacturer, which is Embraer. And that's because Embraer owns 73% of our shares. And with that comes a host of privileges and benefits and being able to leverage all of Embraer's engineering expertise, aerospace heritage, in the form of talent in designing, developing, and certifying aircraft.
Embraer traditionally makes very serious jets. Do the people in the jet land at Embraer look at this as less important than a jet since it's just electric and it's quiet and all of that?
No, I think it's quite the contrary, actually. Eve, like I said before, has a very close relationship with Embraer, and with being able to leverage and harness all of that aerospace expertise, we have the relationship that we have with Embraer. For example, is that we have a master services agreement with Embraer where we're contracting 800 of Embraer's finest engineers that are dedicated to the program development of Eve, or the Eve 100, as we'd like to call it, the aircraft that's going to go into service in a couple of years. And so everyone's incredibly passionate. We have the benefit, and we're incredibly privileged and lucky to be able to harness all of that expertise. I don't know if you know, Chuck, but Embraer has certified over 23 aircraft programs in the last 55 odd years. Actually, I think it's more than 55 years. And it's just, I couldn't say anything else except for the fact that it's world-class aircraft. And so being able to translate all of that knowledge and transfer that knowledge into, what we're going to try and that what we're attempting to produce here at Eve is nothing short of stellar. We're looking to produce all electric, four passenger, single pilot eVTOLs. And eVTOLs stand for electric vertical takeoff and landing. For those, who are listening and don't know what that stands for, which means that the aircraft will vertically take off and land. But then when it transitions into cruise and moves forward, it flies like an aircraft. So it takes off and lands like a helicopter, but then it moves forward like an aircraft. So it's a little bit of a hybrid of both. And the idea is that these aircraft, at least for Eve, what we're looking to achieve is to solve a fundamental problem, which is finding alternative ways to travel inside dense cities. We've done a host of analyses where we have found that the urban cities are just going to get denser and denser. And so as a result of that, ground infrastructure can only take so much. And we have to look for alternative ways to travel. So one of the ways to do that is look to the skies. And we want to be able to provide safe, scalable, efficient, green, sustainable, otherwise known as sustainable ways to travel. And this is where Eve is looking to solve that problem.
What is the market looking at? Because you've got somewhere near like around 3,000 back orders already. Companies are obviously buying into it, even though the public hasn't seen it yet. Why so success? Like what are they seeing at this that maybe the public doesn't know about?
You've definitely done your homework, Chuck. You're absolutely right. We've gotten a lot of interest. We have nearly 20, well, actually a little over 2,700 eVTOLs in back order, and that's global. So that's 29 customers in 9 countries around the world. A large portion of the backlog is in the Americas, so looking at Brazil and the United States, and then we also have the remainder that's around the world. In fact, what we found through our market forecast is that we do see a lot of growth potential as well for urban air mobility, specifically looking at eVTOLs moving around in Asia Pacific as well, because of the rising class and also the regional revitalization in some parts of the world in APAC. So coming back to the interest that you were talking about, we found interest from a diverse mix of customers or operators. So we have airlines in our backlog, such as United, Republic Airways, even, and then we have helicopter operators such as Heli Inc., which is one of the largest helicopter operators in the United States. Recently, that backlog has started to convert to firm. One of the things that I've taken on since I joined the company is to be able to work with our operators and partner with our operators to understand how can we make this profitable for them, because one has to be able to operate these eVTOLs in a way that makes business sense. And in doing so, we look at what are the routes they're going to travel? What are the initial markets going to look like? What's the demographic of their passengers that are going to be flying in these eVTOLs? And so when we carry out that analysis, we are able to understand what we refer to as use cases. Use cases means what are the types of missions that these eVTOLs will be used for. And we found that the most attractive use cases for our operators, what we refer to as last mile, first mile, last mile, which is either the first part or the last part of your journey. So let's say you've just landed into JFK Airport. You need to get into Manhattan. So normally that journey is by ground can be filled up with traffic. It can take you to over an hour getting into Manhattan, but that journey would be via the skies is transferred by 15 minutes, is translated into 15 minutes. So that's over an hour journey that, can take up to as little as 15 minutes in the skies. And then you have the urban hops mission. So now you're inside the city, but once again, you have to battle with traffic to be able to get from one point to the other. And we find that's an attractive business case as well. The last piece, which we found that our operators find attractive, are sightseeing cases. So that can be very attractive to the passengers. Already, of course, helicopters are used for that today. And we see that our operators would like to also complement their fleet to use eVTOLs for those use cases as well.
For airport transportation, like Heathrow, JFK, LaGuardia, and so forth, do you see multiple different companies operating these? Just like different airlines use them right now?
Sorry,
In,
Chuck,
in
can you
terms of
repeat that?
other additional eVTOL companies, multiple companies operating out of the same locations, basically same kind of airports, because obviously these are attractive operations for every airline, every eVTOL company, every
Right.
helicopter company. Everyone sees it. It's kind of obvious. Is
Right.
that how you see it playing out?
I think there's space for multiple operators to be, playing in the airport shuttle use case. In some cases, we're having discussions with airlines where, potentially this could be a scenario where the airlines could add it as an ancillary charge onto the ticket price. Then we are also talking to helicopter operators that are interested in offering the service to be able to carry out the airport shuttle case or the last mile case. So I think there could be a large potential for multiple operators to participate.
Do you see the ground operation being the toughest part of this whole thing? I mean, obviously you're going to figure out the flying part, but dealing with vertiports and energy and infrastructure and all those things they're kind of complicated.
Absolutely. And not only that, Chuck, there's investment required, right? So there's potential capex required depending on the degree of modifications or just the introduction of brand new infrastructure. This infrastructure is a key enabler to the advanced air mobility market being able to launch successfully and scale from there. This is why Eve has approached this from an ecosystem perspective, or better said, this is why Eve has approached this with an ecosystem approach. But that's because we don't want to be just the eVTOL supplier. We recognize that our operators are going to require support operating the eVTOLs, and also being able to navigate in a low altitude economy because we're dealing with high volumes of transportation. So Eve has approached this. Eve also recognizes that we're not going to be infrastructure providers, but what we have done is that we have tried to bridge the gap by partnering with infrastructure providers. So, for example, we are partnered with Vertiports by Atlantic. We are partnered with Signature Aviation, both of which are FBOs, but also that what that enables is the ability to work with them and help them understand how we are designing and developing eVTOLs. What's the performance spec going to look like? What are the power solutions that are required for the eVTOLs, which then in turn helps to which in turn enables the infrastructure companies in parallel to start developing or start thinking and planning for vertiports, for example. We're also approaching the from a different angle, we're also looking to build close relationships with local and state partners because there's a host of regulatory approvals, land approvals, zoning sites, et cetera, that are also may be required.
In terms of the development time, your development time of the whole thing from 2017 till now has been relatively short compared to some other companies. I mean, some companies have been doing this like 15, 20 years almost. And I wonder, is that because of the Embraer heritage that the company knows how to build planes, essentially? Or is it something different? Or is it just technology has changed? What is it that's made it faster?
Is made the technology faster.
Well, the development time faster for Embraer versus Eve Air versus some of the other companies.
I think it is absolutely the heritage of Embraer that's playing a strong role for Eve. Being able to harness all of the engineering talent that goes into designing, developing, and certifying aircraft. Our approach to certification is also different than our peers in the industry. So we have an ethos that's that we refer to as certify to fly, as opposed to fly to certify. And that is based
That's well
off
said, by the way.
And that is based off of, once again, leaning on the decades of experience with certifying aircraft. We believe that our approach has been centered around extensive ground testing and safety validation, systems integration testing, before we approach the flight test campaign. So, for example, Chuck, we've carried out extensive testing and safety validation checks before we commenced our engineering prototype flight test campaign. And we commenced that late last year. And now that we've commenced that this year already to date, we've completed over 30 flights to date successfully. And that translates to over 106 minutes in flight. And we're looking to complete hundreds of flights this year, nearly twice daily, weather permitting, of course. But that will give us the ability to collect that real world data. The way we approach flight is we approach flight to test parameters that could not be tested on ground. We leave the most critical items for the flight test campaign and carry out as much thorough testing through systems and safety validations, through the Ironbird, to be able to simulate scenarios before we proceed certification flight test campaign. And we believe that reduces the certification risk. And we also believe that reduces the costs involved with the program, which means there's less surprises at the end and we're able to accelerate our timeline as a result of it.
You mentioned weather. Will these things be able to fly in all weather?
Well, all year round weather, that is the goal for our eVTOLs. Of course, we have to be able to mature the technology to be able to get there. And that is what we're working towards.
I'm just wondering, in the industry in general, the market in general. I mean, you're in Florida, I'm in Florida, so we know things in California. It's easy to fly, but when you're dealing with like the Northeast and the winter and all of that, In terms of the market, not just Eve Air, but do you see these things in general being able to fly most of the time?
I think we have to work through the technology developments, Chuck, to be able to circumvent severe weather conditions, etc., icing conditions. These are all elements that we're currently developing as we speak. So I think from our perspective, the launch markets that we're looking at with our operators will be primarily first beginning in that target markets such as California, Florida. We have close relationships with FDOT, working closely for them to understand their AAM initiatives, and then also looking for Texas. Did I mention Texas? I'm forgetting now. But California, Texas, Florida, those are some of the initial launch markets that Eve is particularly looking to work with
They
our.
might be big enough by themselves.
Yes, yes.
So are you having fun?
Oh, yes. There's never a dull day, Chuck. It's so exciting to be working so closely to our operators and to be able to understand how they're carrying out the urban air mobility case today. So, for example, we firmed our first order. So that what does firm mean? It means that we've converted those soft orders into binding agreements with pre-delivery payments coming in. And the first customer that we firmed it with was Revo. And they are an AAM arm of OHI Group, which is one of the largest helicopter operators in Latin America. They have over 60 helicopters in their fleet, I believe. And they carry out the urban air mobility case today successfully. So they are carrying out the case in Brazil. They transport passengers from Guarulhos Airport into downtown Sao Paulo and back, and it just proves the demand exists. And today they've firmed an order for over 450 eVTOLs to be able to complement their existing helicopter fleet with eVTOLs. Similarly, we're working with another operator in Japan, AirX, who also firmed their order for 50 eVTOLs. And they are also an established helicopter operator player in Japan with over 10 AOC partners. And their primary objective is to cater to the last mile mission in Tokyo, but then also sightseeing cases, as well as regional revitalization, which is the consolidated strategy of Japan. In fact, Japan is quite impressive because they're taking this consolidated approach where the private and public entities are working together to be able to solve for those three use cases. So yes, I think to fun would be an understatement. There's something new to learn every minute of the day. But it is absolutely it's so exciting because it's a new era in aviation. I think we all get to play a small role together. We get to play a small role in establishing what can be the new chapter in aviation, and doing so very carefully so that we can do it we can launch the industry in a safe, scalable, and reliable way. And Eve is laser focused to be able to work with Embraer and partner with Embraer in this case to be able to solve for how to design, develop, and produce and certify aircraft in a way that would be safe, first and foremost, safe for the people that are riding the eVTOLs. These eVTOLs are being created for dense urban operations. So the value proposition to our operators are centered around being able to carry out high volumes of urban transport, passenger transport, in short turnaround times, 15-minute trips. You take 15 minutes to recharge, and then you're off and you're on your way to being able to carry out a different load, because we want to be able to increase the revenue for our operators so that they can be profitable.
Lastly, a year from now, we're sitting here having this conversation about flying vehicles. What will we be talking about?
Oh, what will we be talking about? I think I think we will be talking about the flight test campaign that we'll be carrying out. So we're kicking off the certification flight test campaign next year with 6 conforming prototypes. The goal is to be able to be actually currently in parallel, we are manufacturing the components for the conforming prototypes, and we're looking to kick off our certification campaign next year with the goals to bring these to certify these eVTOLs for late 2027.
I look forward to that conversation. Thank you very much, Megan. And thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things. I'm Chuck Martin.
Thank you, Chuck, for having me. This was really fun. Appreciate it.